Hey everybody, Jeremy Lechner here once again, and welcome back to Jeremy Reviews, a show dedicated to spreading the truth and sharing a passion for entertainment in a safe and spoiler-free way. I know it's been a long time, guys. I'm sorry for being so long life, and I do apologize for the voice today. I've got a little bit of a cold, but I had to come back for one reason and one reason only. Because this movie is freaking awesome! So without any further ado, let's dive right in. This is Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman. So Wonder Woman, guys, is the latest film by Warner Brothers Studios and DC Comics, and is starring Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, and Danny Huston, and is directed by Patty Jenkins. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. Growing up, I was a fan of DC Comics, the DC superheroes. I'll flatly say that they were my people. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, the whole Justice League, they were the ones I loved. But, truth be told, once the film started, the DC sort of fell apart for me in terms of their films. For me, Marvel became the cinematic superheroes, the ones that I clung on to. I'll readily admit that, guys. I want to get that out of the way just to make it clear where I stand on this issue. But to be clear, I love the DC superheroes. And truth be told, I'll be honest, I'm willing to admit that with the Marvel films, I have been somewhat feeling a sense of sameness. So for me, I was looking forward to having a really good DC film. For me, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman just didn't cut it. I wanted something to succeed, and thank frickin' God Wonder Woman has done that, ladies and gentlemen. Wonder Woman does a really good job, and I wanted to do a video for you guys just to explain what it is that makes this film so effective and successful, what sets it apart. So, without any further ado, let's just dive right into the story, the first part. Now, once again, as I always say, no spoilers. Now, what first struck me about the story with Wonder Woman is that it stands apart from the other DC films, but also the other Marvel films from the Marvel films, I shouldn't say the other Marvel films, but from the Marvel films in one specific way, which is how straightforward it is. You see, basically, what they did with this film was they cut out all the superficial elements and just got down to the nitty-gritty of what was important, which was the story of Wonder Woman, aka Diana, the Princess of Themyscira. Basically, the story goes that we start on Themyscira, the island of the Amazons, where we meet Princess Diana, aka Wonder Woman, and we follow her along her journey as she discovers not only her own sense of her powers, but who she is, how she feels about the world, and how she relates to it. She learns what it means to basically be a hero. Does it mean to save everyone, or do you have to save some people and sacrifice others? She grapples with that, and it's very poignant. It's very straightforward. There's no complicated plots in this film of some, huge villain who's planning to create, this death device, or planning to steal, this crystal from this ancient dimension. It's none of that. It's none of those things. And unlike the DC films, which were often told in very disjointed fashion, this film is just a straight linear narrative. We see Diana when she's younger, we see her when she becomes, Wonder Woman, and we see her journey just going forward. And I don't think this is so much a spoiler, because it's pretty much the basics of storytelling. It's just something that I feel DC, and to a certain extent even Marvel, sometimes forget when saying their stories. And that makes it easier to follow. The reason I talk about it is it makes it easier to follow and to get invested. And of course it's aided by the fact that the film has a tendency to play with the cliches. It will give you things that we've seen before. I mean, let's face it, we've seen countless superhero films. We know what we're going to get. But what this film does is it gives us things that look familiar, but then it flips them. And I'll get a little bit more specific later on, but to just give a pretty basic example, one of the cliches that it plays with is the whole idea of trying to save people and the fact that you can't always do it. The struggle between trying to save as many people as you possibly can and the simple recognition that you can't always do that. A lot of times in most films, even superhero films, the one who says we can't save everyone is treated as the heavy. They're treated as the villain almost. But in this film, there's a very real debate that exists within the story. The arc of Diana is trying to understand how complex that issue is, the complexity of the human heart. And it really delves into that, which I appreciate. But it's aided, obviously, by the characters, and I want to get into them. Obviously, we got to start with Wonder Woman herself, played by Gal Gadot. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. That's just the pronunciation that I know. Now, what's really wonderful about this film is that Wonder Woman kind of reminds me of the original Superman back from the 70s. She's very optimistic in this film. There's almost a naivete to her in that she has that kind of old-fashioned view that, I just want to be a hero, that, there's clear bad guys in this world and the bad guys need to be stopped. She almost has this idea that if only the bad guys were stopped, that somehow everything would be okay. Yes, you can argue that, it's simplistic, that it doesn't necessarily show the complexities of the world, but what's really nice about this is Gal Gadot's performance. She's able to be endearing, she's able to be sincere in it. See, I was worried with Gal Gadot when I first heard she was cast, because her experience with Fast and Furious didn't exactly endear her to me. Not to say the Fast and Furious films are bad, it's just that when you're playing one of the most iconic superheroes of all freaking time, there's a lot riding on that. But thankfully, what I would say is her inexperience actually works well for her. Gal Gadot does a really good job in this film of appraising, which is basically just taking things in, looking at people, responding to things, emoting through her face, her facial expressions. She does a great job of conveying confusion or curiosity or uncertainty or optimism, like I mentioned. She does a really good job of endearing you to her. And aside from a few moments where I felt that she was indicating, I thought she did very, very well. And she does a great job of conveying that development of Wonder Woman into the icon that we know her as. But she's not alone. She's joined by Chris Pine, Mr. Captain Kirk himself. Now, this speaks a little bit to what I was talking about earlier about the cliches. One of the things I was worried about with this film was that they were going to take Chris Pine and turn him into what's commonly called a dude in distress, which is basically have the guy in the film appear to be weak in order to make the female lead look strong. Thankfully, they don't do that. Chris Pine is a guy who knows how to take care of himself. He knows how to own himself. He has a charisma. Like I said, he was Captain Kirk. In this film, he's able to hold his own. He's able to take names in a fight. He's able to protect himself. And while he does have to take a step back, obviously, from Wonder Woman, he's still able to engage with her both, intellectually, in some extents physically. He does, fight with her. And at the same time, there's a genuine chemistry between them, not just as friends, but as the possibility of what they can become. I should mention Chris Pine's character. His name is Steve Trevors, Captain Trevors. He is a soldier. He fights in World War I. He's that kind of guy. So he can match wits with Wonder Woman, and that I appreciated. The other character that I do want to mention is Danny Huston. He plays General Ludendorff of the Germans in World War I. And he is sort of the, well, in the trailers it pretty much shows that he's the villain. He's a good guy, like his character is fine. He's one of the only weak points, I would say, of the story, which is the villains. Now, there's a few villains in this movie, and without getting into spoilers, I'll simply say that while one of them is very, very good, I think anyone who's seen this film will know who I'm talking about, the other villains are kind of generalized, I'll say. They're sort of cast as the mustache-twirling villains. They're meant to be that. They're meant to be like the obviously bad guys, and while that's fine, it works well, it just doesn't make them quite as interesting as they could be. Now, there's some nice moments with them. There's a line involving a gas mask that is both disturbing and hilarious at the same time, but aside from that, I would say Danny Huston was okay. He was alright in this film. Now, that's the characters, that's kind of an idea of the story. I want to talk a little bit about the things that really stood out in me for this film that made it exciting for me, and one of them is the action. Now, the action scenes in this film are kind of in keeping with a lot of the other DC films. There's a lot of fast-paced action, but there's a lot of slow motion that's thrown in. They try to play with it using different rhythms. And what's really cool about it is it allows you to sort of live in the moment more as it's happening. It's not just, you know, bam, 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 bam. It's bam, 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 bam. And it lets you just hold on to it. There's lots of nice wide shots in this film of the action scenes. It's not just cut, 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 cut. There's these long shots, slow shots, long moving ones. It's really done well. And the only issue I have with it is, and this is something I gotta say to all my fellow fans of this movie, the slow-mo in this movie is a little bit overdone. I'm gonna say that, guys. Be prepared for the slow-mo to go just a little bit too often. They could have scaled that back. But aside from that, the action I thought was done very, very well. It's free-flowing. There's a dance quality to it. None of it feels repetitive. They make use of the different weapons, the different things that Wonder Woman has. Because Wonder Woman has, you know, her magic bracelet. She has her lasso of truth. She doesn't just use it in this film to make people tell the truth. She fights with it. She uses it. She uses her strength. She and the other Amazons. The Amazons are amazing in this film. The camaraderie that they have and the way that they use their training. We see them training in this film and they use it when they fight. It's done very, very well. And because we care about the characters, because we are endeared to them, it matters. That's the important thing in an action sequence, is if we care about the characters. And that is done very, very well. Now, one thing that I gotta mention also is how this film differentiates itself from the DC films in another way, which is the use of frickin' color. Good frickin' God. DC needs to learn how to use color in its films. When I first saw Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman's costume, her uniform, looked brown to me. But now, it looks red and blue and frickin' gold. It looks like someone took the filter from one of Zack Snyder's films and turned it down a few notches. So now we can actually see the colors, and it's done very, very well. For example, the scenes on Themyscira in the early part of the film, Wonder Woman's home world, it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. The use of, you know, different earth tones, the blues, the water that they use for Wonder Woman's home world is so freaking beautiful. I wanted to drink it. It's that beautiful, that good looking. But at the same time, the film also uses the more traditional DC kind of bland, grayish look to good effect, because it takes place in World War I, and it's supposed to look drab, it's supposed to look dark, it's supposed to look that way. So they blend the two together very, very well, and I hope DC takes hints from this film and continues to do that from now on, so that it's not just a bland, dreary, brooding fest the entire time, because I'm so tired of that. I want something different. But I could go on and on about that forever. But to talk more specifically about this film, just a few other things is the soundtrack by Rupert Williams is absolutely fantastic. It's epic, it's building, it's strong. It could have maybe used a few more whimsical tones, but overall it's fan-frickin-tastic. It brings me back to that time like when I was a kid, when watching a superhero, it was like watching a god come to life. You know, it was something grand, it was something extraordinary, and they play that out to that effect because it's Wonder Woman. You feel the sense of wonder. That scene in the trailer where she's fighting in the trenches, you feel that moment with the music playing. Some other things that are really nice is that the film has moments where it slows down, like I said. It allows the characters to just breathe, to just be themselves, to learn about each other. There's a fish out of water element in this story of Wonder Woman being a part of the human world, and she learns about it. She has a sense of wonder herself at what's going on. But it's not like a cliched sort of naivete. There's this kind of humorous sense of when Wonder Woman is with the humans, there's this humorous sense that she's almost above it in a certain way. She's like looking at these weird humans with their weird customs. It's done very, very nicely. Some other things that really set this film apart are, let me double check, just is, again, playing with the cliches, the whole idea of You know, a lot of times with these films, what they try to do is they try to make them gritty and dark. You know, the DC films, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, were all about that. It was all about the brooding, the sadness, the depression, Batman and Superman. I'm sad, I'm depressed, my parents are dead. Well, okay, I should admit that that is very sad, but it was nothing but that. This film actually has a sense of humor, a sense of heart. It seems to revel in the fact that this is a superhero film. It makes it exciting again, because that's what superheroes are. It's something that we want to see them fight. We want to see them save people. This film has Wonder Woman saving people. As much as I like the Marvel films, even they tend to ignore that. They just have big action sequences. But here, Wonder Woman constantly talks about how she wants to save people, the importance of saving people, and that's done very, very well. And before you start thinking that I go on the action too much, there is one last thing I gotta point out which sort of sets the film on top for me, and that is the climax. The freaking climax! Oh my god, I'm getting giddy just thinking about it. The climax of this film, unlike a lot of DC films and even a lot of Marvel films, it's built up to. The sense of tension and discovery gradually builds. And unlike the Marvel films with all their big reveals and all their complex schemes, this one is just straightforward. It's bad guy, gonna destroy the world, what are we gonna do about it? It does something, without spoilers, it does something that they did in Man of Steel, but it does it right. If you look at the Nostalgia Critic review of it, you'll notice a specific element that they talk about. It's important, but if you see the film, you'll notice it. But I don't want to get bogged down on that. I'll simply say the climax is really good because you feel the sense of dread, the sense of emotion, that moment when you worry that Wonder Woman is not going to make it is there, and then she builds up. That sense, just that sense of, you know, Wonder Woman's vulnerability and trying to overcome that, you know, it got me invested. It made me feeling like a kid again. I was watching the film and I was imagining it in these terms, you know, the big bad guy saying, "Look at me, I'm a big badass," and Wonder Woman's like, "No, I'm the badass." I'm sorry, my Gal Gadot impression is very, very bad, but it was like that. It's like that. You get what I'm saying, you know? And you have the action, you have the explosions, you have that building tension, you have the dance of destruction of the fight. It's just brilliant. That was one of my favorite parts of the film, and for me, it kind of put it over the top. That was what gave it, you know, the high scoring. So, for me, guys, needless to say, this film is very, very well done. It's very brilliant in its story, in its dialogue. Its dialogue feels very realistic. The moments feel natural. They feel like genuine human beings butting heads. It doesn't feel like a forced, you know, people coming together. It feels like a superhero film that we can get excited about, that we can have fun with, that we can just enjoy. It's not just a drear fest. It's not just, you know, a big action sequence. It's a melding of the personal and the exciting. And most important of all, it's finally DC doing something uniquely its own. Instead of just trying to be the anti-Marvel, it's doing something uniquely DC, and I hope that they continue to do it. And the only thing I have left to say is just my little nitpicks, which are, I've mentioned before, you know, the need to tone back the slow motion. There's a lot of CGI in this film, especially at the end. There was a little issue with the villains being a little too broad. They could have maybe given them a little bit more depth. And honestly, the only real big problem I have with this film is that I don't see why it needed to come after Batman v Superman. I feel if Batman v Superman was not done before this film, it would have been easier to get invested in it, and it would not have been as encumbered by that baggage. But that's not really something I can hold against the film. I just wanted to mention it. So guys, with all of this said, I'm going to get to the score. For me, Wonder Woman easily earns a very solid 9 out of 10. It is an epic film, and it easily earns my must-see seal of approval. I know pretty much all of you have seen it already, but this is just me endorsing it right now. Go out and see Wonder Woman. Go out and see it. It is worth the price of admission. We need to make DC take cues from this film so that it doesn't just go back to the old way, that it does something new and something different. Whether you're a DC fan or a Marvel fan, whether you're someone who enjoys that sense of female empowerment, that power message, or someone who doesn't necessarily want it in your films, both can equally get something really, really good out of this film. It's that good. As I said before, it's that awesome. It is worth a viewing. It is a definite must-see. Oh, sorry guys, I was getting excited there. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Again, I apologize for the voice, but it's just something I had to say. So guys, if you like what you saw here today and you want to see more, don't forget to please hit subscribe and like below. And if you want to see some of my older written reviews, just go on to Facebook and you'll find them there. So guys, thank you so much once again for joining me here, and I hope to see you again next time. But until then, I wish you guys all the very best, and happy film going.
Wonder Woman! All the world is waiting for you, and the power you possess. In your satin tights, fighting for your rights, and the old red, white, and blue.